Justice Nathan, Mr. Levine, ladies and gentlemen. It is a real honour to be invited here today to adjudicate this important debating topic, and it is a pleasure to realise that I don't have to send the loser to jail. A mahaya. The topic, as you are only too painfully aware, is one of grave significance, and I am pleased to be able to say that both speakers drew some attention to the serious social problems raised by the consequences of unrestricted poppy farming. In our community, we have thankfully not yet reached the stage at which our people are being found lying in gutters, stoned out of their brains on poppy seed cake. I know that some of you here tonight had to have your fix of hamantashen just to make it to this debate. And of course, the outward signs of poppy seed abuse can be quite difficult to detect. There may occasionally be some telltale signs around the lips and chin in those addicts who have tried to have their cake and eat it. Occasionally, a husband or wife will discover in the family's credit card statements an unusually high amount of money spent at Glicks. But generally it goes undetected in our community. Now let me turn to the way in which I have decided to score this debate. I was prepared to give 2 points to Justice Howard Nathan for petexia, in case one of my own cases turned up on appeal in front of him, in front of Howard, sitting on the Court of Appeal. For these 2 points, Howard, I expect a favourable outcome. And to be fair to Greg Levine, I was prepared to give him 2 points too, because after all, that's only fair. I gave 1 point if a speaker wore a kippah and deducted 1 point if he did not. Greg Levine scored 1.5 points because he wore a kippah covered with poppy seed. Howard wore something on his head which resembles a kippah, so I gave him 0.5 point. I deducted points from any speaker failing to mention how John Howard had been given apparently reliable information that the boat people were smuggling hamantashen into Australia aboard the Tampa. I also deducted a point for not mentioning that innocent children had been seen throwing hamantashen overboard. For the main part, however, I awarded the bulk of the points to style and content. Style I divided into presentation and audience rapport. Let me consider the first speaker first, and to make things as uncomplicated as possible, let me consider the second speaker second. Mr. Levine made the following telling points: that poppy seeds are injurious to health, increased weight and heartburn. He also said that it was illegal for us to grow poppy seed. I don't agree with some of his comments, however, that poppy seeds lead to hair growth, and as a judge, I tell you that there is simply no evidence to support his argument in that regard. I was disappointed also with the recipe for Haman's fritters. Everyone knows that you only make fritters on Hanukkah. Overall, I gave him 3 out of 5 for content and 4 for style. Justice Nathan. As always, I was impressed with Howard's style and delivery. He was funny, as always. I give him 5 out of 5 for style. As for content, he made the following good points. He talked about the origins of poppy seed and the indecency of poppy seed plants. However, I felt that he was somewhat preoccupied with books in this day and age, and receptacles in the city of Melbourne. I also reject his argument that poppy seed encourages hair growth. I felt that he could have developed the following points a little more. First of all, the harmful effects of poppy seed, and I also felt that his reference to the Pope was totally irrelevant. Accordingly, I award Justice Nathan 4 points for style. That brings me to my conclusion, and I award a total of 7 points for Greg Levine, and let me see, a total of 9 points for Justice Nathan. However, because Greg Levine wore a poppy seed kippah and obtained 1.5 points, he scored 8.5 points. And because Nathan was almost wearing a kippah, I declare Justice Nathan the winner at 9.5 points. I also declare that this has nothing to do with the fact that Justice Nathan occasionally sits on the Court of Appeal.
That concludes our great debate. It reminds me of a debate about a century ago where the Pope was actually involved, and he decided that all the Jews had to leave Rome. Naturally, the Jews were upset about this, and as a consequence, the Pope made a deal. The deal was he would have a religious debate with a member of the Jewish community. If the Jews won, the Jews could stay. If the Pope won, the Jews would leave. The Jews realised they had no choice, so they picked a middle-aged man named Moshe to represent them. Moshe asked for one addition to the debate. To make it more interesting, neither side would be allowed to talk. The Pope agreed. The day of the great debate came. Moshe and the Pope sat opposite each other for a full minute before the Pope raised his hand and showed 3 fingers. Moshe looked back at him and raised 1 finger. The Pope waved his finger around in a circle above his head. Moshe pointed to the ground where he sat. The Pope pulled out a wafer and a glass of wine. Moshe pulled out an apple. The Pope stood up and said, "I give up. This man is too good. The Jews can stay." An hour later, the cardinals were all around the Pope asking him, "What happened?" The Pope said, "First, I held up 3 fingers to represent the Trinity." He responded by holding 1 finger to remind me there was still one God common to both our religions. Then I waved my finger around me to show that God was all around us. He responded by pointing to the ground and showing that God was right here with us. I pulled out the wafer and wine, to show that God absolves us from our sins. He pulled out an apple to remind me of the original sin. He had an answer for everything. What could I do? Meanwhile, the Jewish community had crowded around Moshe. "No, what happened? What happened?" they asked. "Well, first, he said that the Jews had 3 days to get out of here. I told him that not one of us was leaving. Then he told me that the whole city would be cleared of Jews. I let him know we were staying right here." "Yes, then?" Moshe said, "I don't know. He took out his lunch and I took out mine." Fortunately, our debate here didn't have quite the consequences. I'm reminded of the advertisement that appeared in this week's Jewish News. I was concerned, depending on the conclusion that our debate would come to, that this might have been inciting criminal behaviour, asking us to buy pastry and yeast filled with poppy seed, so that even the Jewish News this week could have been seen to be acting in a most illegal way. Nevertheless, that issue has been resolved, and